My name is Paige Dawson. I'm 31. Last Friday, my dad sat me down at the kitchen table and told me I owed $300,000, or I was no longer his daughter. He said it was my sister's debt, that I had to cover it because family takes care of family. I looked at my father, then at my mother, who wouldn't meet my eyes, and I said, then I'm not. I drove 2 hours home that night, and when I called my bank, what I found wasn't just a number on a screen. It was 3 years of lies signed in my name, by the people who raised me. 7 days later, my entire family showed up at my door. I opened it and said 2 words. Before I take you back to that Friday night, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to 3 weeks ago, the night my father called a family meeting. The drive from Columbus to Millfield takes 2 hours if traffic cooperates. That Friday, it didn't, so I had plenty of time to wonder why my father had used the word urgent on the phone. Gerald Dawson doesn't use that word for holidays, birthdays, or hospital visits. He saves it for the hardware store. Dawson and Sons Hardware sits on the ground floor of my parents' house, a brick building on Main Street that my father has run for 32 years. There's no son. There never was. Just me and Brielle, my younger sister. The sign was aspirational, Dad said once. I stopped asking about it after that. Growing up, the division was clean. I got responsibility. Brielle got protection. I worked the register from 16, paid my own tuition at Ohio State, graduated summa cum laude in accounting. Brielle got her tuition covered, a car for her 21st birthday, and seed money for an online boutique that sold overpriced candles and scarves. When the boutique didn't turn a profit the first year, Dad refinanced something, I never knew what, and gave her more. I didn't resent it. I told myself that's just how families work. Some kids get the safety net, some kids become the safety net. I was proud of what I'd built on my own, a senior accountant position at a mid-size firm in Columbus, a savings account I never touched, and a down payment sitting in escrow for my first house. A 2-bedroom in Westerville with a backyard just big enough for a garden. I parked behind the store at 7:15. The lights upstairs were on. Brielle's car wasn't in the lot. Dad met me at the door. No hug. Your sister's running late. Come sit down. The kitchen table was cleared. No plates, no food, just Dad and Mom, sitting across from each other like it was an interview. Something was wrong. Dad didn't ease into it. He never does. Brielle's in trouble, he said. The boutique, the expansion loan, all of it. She owes $300,000. I set my keys on the table. 300,000. I did the math without thinking. Occupational hazard. That's roughly 6 years of my gross salary, nearly every dollar I'd saved since college. That's a lot of debt, I said. What's the plan? Dad leaned forward. His hands were flat on the table, fingers spread, the way he stands behind the counter when he's about to quote a price he won't negotiate. You're paying it, he said, or you're no longer our child. The kitchen went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Mom stared at her hands in her lap, turning her wedding ring like a dial she couldn't find the right setting for. Why me? I asked. Because you can, Dad said. She can't. I've been saving for a house. A house can wait, family can't. I looked at Mom. Do you agree with this? She didn't look up. Your father knows what's best. There it was. Not a request. Not a discussion. A verdict delivered at the kitchen table in the same voice he used to tell suppliers their invoices were wrong. I was the supplier now, and the invoice was my entire financial future. I stood up. My chair didn't scrape. I lifted it back the way I'd been taught. Even in that moment, I was polite. Even in that moment, I was the dependable one. Then I'm not, I said. Dad blinked. Not what? Your child. If that's the condition, then I'm not. I picked up my keys. Mom finally looked up, but I was already walking to the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I drove back to Columbus in the dark. Somewhere around mile 80, the numbers started bothering me. 300,000. Dad said it like he'd rehearsed it. Not around 300, or a few 100,000. A precise number. Gerald Dawson doesn't guess at figures. He knows them. which meant he hadn't just heard about Brielle's debt. He'd been looking at it, studying it, long enough to memorize the total. By the time I unlocked my apartment in Columbus, it was almost 10. I checked my bank accounts first. Checking, savings, the escrow fund for the house. Everything looked normal. But something nagged. 3 weeks ago, my mortgage application had been denied. The loan officer said there were discrepancies in my credit profile and suggested I review my report. I'd assumed it was an error. Banks make mistakes, systems glitch. I'd planned to follow up Monday. Now it was Friday night, and my father had just quoted a six-figure number at me like it was an invoice I'd already agreed to. I pulled my credit report from Equifax. Free, annual, takes 4 minutes. My credit score was 480. I read it again. 480. There were 4 credit cards I had never opened. An auto loan for $45,000 on a vehicle I had never driven. 2 personal loans totaling $120,000 from lenders I had never contacted. Every account was delinquent, some by 6 months, some by over a year. Late fees, collection notices, liens. The name on every account was mine. The social security number was mine. The addresses were not. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the screen until the numbers stopped looking like numbers and started looking like a crime. Because that's what this was. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. The addresses weren't mine. But I recognized the zip code. It was Millfield. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled reports from all 3 bureaus: Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. The details varied slightly between them, but the shape of the damage was identical. Total debt under my name, $312,000. 4 credit cards with combined limits of $67,000. An auto loan, $45,000, for a BMW X3 registered in Ohio. 2 personal loans from online lenders, one for $70,000, another for $50,000. A store credit line for $22,000 at a furnishing company I'd never heard of. Interest charges, penalty fees, collection accounts. The mailing address on every single account was a P.O. box in Millfield, Ohio. Not my apartment in Columbus. Not any address I'd ever used. A P.O. box. Someone had set it up specifically to intercept the paperwork. I'm a senior accountant. I review financial documents for a living. I recognize fraud when I see it, in spreadsheets, in receipts, in journal entries that don't match. But I'd never thought to look at my own credit report the way I look at a client's ledger. I'd trusted the one institution I never audited, my family. Someone had used my social security number to open accounts. Someone had forged my signature on applications. Someone had redirected my mail so I'd never see a single statement or collection letter. For 3 years, $312,000. That was almost exactly the number my father had quoted at dinner, the number he told me was Brielle's debt that I needed to pay. He wasn't asking me to bail out my sister. He was asking me to quietly absorb a debt that already existed under my name, a debt he helped create. I said it out loud for the first time, alone in my apartment at 2 a.m. My parents stole my identity. 3 months ago, I found the house. A 2-bedroom in Westerville, white siding, blue shutters, a backyard with a maple tree that would turn gold in October. I put down $15,000, everything from a savings account I'd fed since I was 23, 8 years of packing lunches, skipping vacations, driving a car with 200,000 miles on it. The mortgage officer at the bank had smiled when she reviewed my income. "This should be straightforward," she said. 2 weeks later, she called back. Denied. Something about credit irregularities. She recommended I check my report and reapply. I'd assumed it was a hiccup, a transposed number, a duplicate entry. I told myself I'd handle it after the holidays. Now I knew what the irregularity was. A credit score of 480 means no one lends you money. Not for a house, not for a car, not for a business. To any lender in America, I looked like someone who borrows recklessly and never pays back. My 8 years of discipline, my perfect payment history on my actual accounts, none of it mattered. The fraud had buried everything. And if I did nothing? The debt would keep accruing. The collection agencies would keep calling, not at the P.O. box in Millfield, but eventually at my real address, my workplace. I could be sued by creditors for debts I never incurred. My wages could be garnished. My career as an accountant, a profession built entirely on financial trustworthiness, would be over. I called Nora at 2 in the morning. She picked up on the second ring because that's the kind of friend she is. I told her everything, the dinner, the number, the credit reports. She was quiet for 10 seconds. Nora is never quiet for 10 seconds. Paige, you need a lawyer. Tonight. Nora works in forensic accounting, the kind of work where you untangle money trails for a living. 2 years ago, she'd consulted on a case involving a client whose ex-husband had opened credit lines in her name during their divorce. The attorney who handled it was named Russell Kemp, and according to Nora, he was the best identity theft litigator in Central Ohio. He's not cheap, Nora said, but he's thorough. I emailed Russell Kemp at 3:17 in the morning. I attached screenshots of all 3 credit reports, the denied mortgage letter, and a summary of what my father had said at dinner. I wrote it the way I'd write a memo at work. Chronological, factual, no editorializing. Russell replied at 6:42 a.m., 4 sentences. Ms. Dawson, I've reviewed the attachments. This appears to be a clear case of familial identity theft involving mail fraud and forged applications. Do not contact your family. Do not confront them. We need documentation before anything else. Do not contact your family. The sentence sat on my screen like a wall I couldn't see past. These weren't strangers. This was the woman who drove me to my first day of school, the man who taught me to balance a checkbook. But Russell was right. I'd spent my whole career examining other people's financial misconduct, following evidence trails, flagging discrepancies, building cases that held up under scrutiny. Now I had to do the same thing, except the case was my own life, and the suspects were the people who raised me. I wrote back. Understood. What do I need to do first? He replied in 30 seconds. Check your USPS mail forwarding history. If someone rerouted your mail without authorization, that's a federal offense. That changes everything. I opened a new browser tab. My hands were steady. My chest was not. Saturday morning, 7 a.m. My phone rang. Dad. I almost let it go to voicemail, but Russell had said, don't confront. He hadn't said, don't listen, so I picked up. You made your mother cry all night. His opening line, no hello. I'm sorry she's upset. She's not upset. She's heartbroken. Her own daughter walked out. I didn't walk out. I said no. Same thing in this family. I let that sit. The silence stretched long enough that I could hear the cash register downstairs. Saturday mornings, the store opens at 7. Even in crisis, Gerald Dawson opens on time. Dad, we need to talk about the money. That's what I tried to do last night. No, we need to talk about where it actually came from. A pause. 3 seconds. 4. Family takes care of family, Paige. Family doesn't steal from family either. 5 seconds now. I counted them. Nobody stole anything, he said. His voice dropped half a register, the way it does when he's choosing words carefully. We borrowed. You don't borrow what you never asked for. We were going to pay it back, once the store turned around. The store hasn't turned around in 6 years, Dad. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain. He shifted. If you do something stupid, you'll tear this family apart. Something stupid like calling my bank? Dead silence. No sharp inhale. No scramble for excuses. Just silence. The kind that tells you the other person already knew you'd find out. He just hadn't expected it this fast. We'll talk about this as a family, he said. We'll talk about it with my lawyer. He hung up. I set the phone down and noticed something. He hadn't denied anything, not once. He'd only tried to reframe it. Mom called at 4 that afternoon. She'd been crying, or she wanted me to think she had. With Donna Dawson, those two things aren't always different. Your father has high blood pressure, she said. You know that. This stress could put him in the hospital. I understand. Then come home. We'll sit down, all 4 of us, and figure this out. Mom, I need to ask you something. Anything, sweetheart. Did you sign my name on those loan applications? The line went so quiet I checked to make sure we were still connected. 4 seconds. 5. 6. Then she spoke, but not to answer. Brielle is falling apart. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. She needs her sister. Mom, I asked you a direct question. Everything I've ever done was for this family. You have to understand that. I do understand it. That's the problem. Your father said it would be temporary, just until the store. Did you sign my name, yes or no? Her breath hitched. I did it to keep this family together. There it was. Not a denial. Not even a deflection anymore. A confession dressed up as sacrifice. She said I did it to keep this family together, the way someone says I had no choice. As if love and fraud could share the same sentence and cancel each other out. I let the silence hold. I wanted her to hear herself. If you go to the police, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, you'll destroy this family. I pressed my palm against the kitchen counter. Mom, I didn't destroy anything. I just found out what you built. She hung up first this time, and I stood in my kitchen knowing two things with absolute certainty. My mother had forged my signature, and she'd do it again if no one stopped her. Brielle texted Sunday morning. A long message, the kind that scrolls past two screens and starts with, I need you to know. I had no idea they used your name. I swear on everything. I'm so sorry. Please don't punish me for what Mom and Dad did. I'm your sister. I love you. Part of me wanted to believe her. Brielle has always been good at sincerity. She cries at commercials. She sends handwritten thank you cards. She once drove 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu. Whatever else she is, she's warm. That warmth makes it hard to look at her clearly. But Russell had already sent me something that made it impossible to look away. The auto loan, the $45,000 one for a BMW X3, had a delivery address. Not the P.O. box. Not our parents' house. Brielle's apartment in Athens, Ohio. The car was registered to my name, insured under my social security number, and parked in Brielle's garage. She'd been driving it for 2 years. My name was on the title. My credit was wrecked by the payments she never made. I didn't reply to her text. Instead, I logged into the USPS informed delivery portal. Russell had told me to check for unauthorized mail forwarding. It took 10 minutes and a verification code. There it was. A change of address request filed 3 years ago. All mail addressed to Paige Dawson at my parents' home in Millfield. Forwarded to P.O. Box 1174, Millfield, OH 45764. The request was signed, Paige Dawson. I compared the signature on the USPS form to my actual signature on my driver's license renewal. The slant was close. The spacing was off. The D in Dawson curled the wrong direction. A small thing, but unmistakable if you know what to look for. Someone had practiced. Someone had gotten close. But not close enough. Monday morning. Russell's office was on the 3rd floor of a building near the Franklin County Courthouse. Clean, organized, no family photos on the desk. He laid out the documents like a surgeon arranging instruments. Credit reports from all 3 bureaus, the USPS mail forwarding record. Printouts of the loan applications he'd requested from each lender. My real signature on file with the Ohio BMV for comparison. Mail fraud is federal, Russell said. He spoke the way he probably spoke in depositions, measured, unhurried, every word carrying weight. Identity theft is federal. Forged signatures on loan applications. That's bank fraud. We're not talking about small claims court, Ms. Dawson. What are my options? He tapped the stack of applications. Option 1. You file an identity theft report with the FTC, freeze your credit with all 3 bureaus, and submit a complaint to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Each creditor opens an investigation. Fraudulent accounts get flagged and eventually removed. Your credit begins to recover. And option 2? You do nothing. You absorb $312,000 in debt someone else created under your name. You lose the house. You lose your financial standing. And in 12 to 18 months, when the creditors start garnishing wages, you lose your career. I stared at the loan applications. 6 documents, 6 forged signatures, each one a little better than the last, as if the person signing had been practicing, learning, getting comfortable writing my name on a line I'd never seen. Russell, I want to give them one chance. 7 days. He studied me. One chance to do what? Come clean. Cooperate. Work out a repayment plan with you. He nodded slowly. 7 days. Then we file everything. I agreed. 7 days felt like a mercy. It also felt like enough rope. I'm sitting in a lawyer's office, looking at 3 years